Hi.
Hey, were you the same Catherine that's joined us for a couple weeks now?
Yes, I changed my picture.
You have a cool new icon and your microphone is working. Awesome.
Yay.
Yay. All right. So hey, my name's Dan. Sorry for the late start again. I need remedial Google Hangouts. Welcome to JavaScript Enabled, the new incarnation of formerly JavaScript Tuesday. I see some familiar faces, which is awesome.
Hi.
Hello, Falai.
Good, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Um, Cool. So I guess we'll just do quick introductions. I'll call on people in alphabetical order. Just say like, what's your name? Where are you generally in the world physically? And then what's your interest and experience level in JavaScript? So my name's Dan. I live in the Bay Area in California, and I am a teaching assistant for a dev school called Viking Code School. And I teach JavaScript. I learn JavaScript, and we're doing a lot of work with Angular right now. So I have fun with it. So that's what I'm here for. Katherine, would you mind just briefly introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Katherine. I live in New York, like right outside New York City. And my JavaScript experience is fairly recent. Um, I'm trying to get through like object-oriented programming, and I've done a lot of jQuery, but I'm still relatively new and trying to figure out design patterns.
Cool. Yeah. It's a very, very good place to be. David just got here, so I'm going to skip him for right now until a couple other people introduce themselves. Falan, welcome back.
Hey,
Can
thanks.
you just briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Falon. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I am a recent graduate from the Code Academy, the Iron Yard. I graduated at the end of July, and currently I am seeking out employment, but I just got 2 offers today, so that's awesome.
Congratulations!
Thanks!
Are they good offers? Don't. Well, this is being recorded, so don't say anything that will affect your negotiation position. But
Okay.
I hope you like the offers. I hope
Okay.
better counter offers. Congratulations. That's really
Thanks a
fun.
lot.
Cool. Jeremy, can you introduce yourself? If your mic is off, if you don't feel like talking, feel free to just put something in the chat window.
No, that's fine. So I'm Jeremy. I'm from La Crosse, Wisconsin. I'm a IT business owner by day and trying to transition into code a little bit. I've been learning JavaScript for about the last year and kind of lurking on Slack and things for probably the last 3 months.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you joined us. Mark, good to see you again. Oh, your mic's off. I still can't hear you. Oh, he's going to type something. Cool. In the meantime, Michael, would you mind introducing yourself?
Oh, hey, my name is Michael. I'm new to the Code Newbie community. I've been trying to break into software development for like a year now, but my JavaScript experience is, I guess I'm still kind of a beginner, but I'm trying to learn things and trying to get out into the community and actually work on something bigger.
Cool. Yeah, that's the idea of these code clubs that Code Newbies is doing. So welcome. I'm glad you could join us. Cool. Tommy, can you just briefly introduce yourself? I can't hear you. Hmm. That's weird. I heard you before.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, Mark. Well, I guess
Okay.
you and Tommy are going to be trading off, like whose microphone is working. Mark, why don't
I
you?
always have that. I always have that issue. Long time listener, first time caller, Dan. Nah, from San Diego, California. I'm currently in the military right now. Slowly making a transition out. I think I have about like 2 years left. I'm about to actually move down to not Costa Rica, El Salvador for a year and a half for a couple of missions, and
Ow.
hopefully line up some jobs when I get back. I'll have like 6 months left, and I'm trying to transition into either front end or back end web development. My current history is about like 6 months of like JavaScript.
Cool. Well, yeah, good to see you again, and hopefully you get a good internet connection down there in El Salvador. And you
Oh, everything's straight. Everything's straight. I already know where I'm living.
cool.
I know where the place is, an hour away from where I'll be working. So it's a nice setup.
Awesome. That's great. Tommy, you think your mic's back up?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Awesome. All right. Yeah, my name is Tommy. I am from Indianapolis, Indiana. I am a Salesforce consultant by day, sort of hovering around coding, but I want to get into it a little bit deeper. Start getting more into the code side rather than the just purely consulting side. JavaScript-wise, been sort of off and on learning it for about a year or so, along with some Ruby and Rails, but I've been focusing more now, and like everybody else, trying to get deeper into it by working on a bigger project, especially with a group of people as well, and just build something bigger, get something in the portfolio, and then keep the momentum rolling.
Cool. Yeah, and you're gonna have a little something to show us today too, right? So.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes.
Awesome. Cool. So I'll just sweep back through again for the people I missed. David, can you introduce yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, my name's David Williams. I live in, I'll say Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I've been in the web world for about 8 years. I work in the marketing department. I do web production and some front end with CSS and HTML. And I have aspirations of becoming a full-stack JavaScript developer. I'm currently enrolled in Block
Oh, cool.
Camp, and I've been supplementing my learning with Code School and also Free Code School. That's me.
Cool. Awesome. Do you mean Free Code Camp?
Free Code Camp, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We got a few other free code campers around here. I know Mark does that. And Nan, what's up?
I'm late.
Cool. We were all late. I made everyone late. We're just doing introductions. Can you just say a little bit about yourself and learning JavaScript?
Sure, I'm Nan Davenport. I live in Oakland. I'm practicing JavaScript. I just finished a 3-month Angular class. I have so much to learn, and I just want to keep practicing and trying to make stuff and learning more.
Awesome. Yeah, I am knee-deep in Angular for my day job right now, and
Cool.
it's really cool, but it's a lot of work, too. So, yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, everyone, for coming. We had a really small meeting last week, but we've sort of talked about the next project for a few weeks in a row now. The goal is to create, use React as to learn a framework, which we didn't do for the first project, and to use it to create a front end, to sort of create a map that code newbies can place themselves on and find other people who, in the community nearby. And the first sort of the minimum viable product is that we also want to incorporate the Meetup API, so that people can find events maybe to attend together and have like a little support network at a coding event. So that's the project. Does anyone have questions about that or thoughts? Because I know most people who are here tonight weren't here for the discussion where we kind of kicked around ideas and decided on something.
No, but it sounds awesome.
Cool. Yeah, I think so too. And I talked about this initially, and Saran kind of echoed it. She's like, we need to, make sure it's like voluntary. And I was like, yes, of course it's like voluntary. You don't have to. No one's going to be like doing data entry, putting people on a map, and make sure it's like relatively private. So we're going to try to figure out a way to put people in sort of like metro area buckets, as opposed to like putting a pin on top of your house. So stalker proofed. Great, because this is all public. Cool. Okay, so I will put out a link to the Trello board, and I know some of you have already been invited to the board. But if you haven't, send me a DM with your email address, and I can invite you to the board. If you were on the last board, it's hard to just transfer a whole batch of people over on Trello. So like especially the way we have it set up. So I'm going to post this link in the general Slack channel, and then I'll post it here. So where did everybody go? Sorry, I seem to have lost the. Oh, there it is. Cool. So yeah, if anyone needs a link to that, just DM me on Slack. Cool. So I guess I should probably do a screen share. We've got thanks. I will take care of that right now.
Does anybody have a link to the last project, the Hangman? I haven't been around for the past couple weeks because I've been super duper busy, but I'd like to see how it came out.
Oh, sure. Let me see. Saran put up. Oh, Saran did put up a landing page for our community, but there's my blog post. So.
Oh, you don't have to worry about it right this second. Just.
Oh yeah, we'll find it.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Mark.
Yeah, so I will do. Oh, Mark's got it. Thank you. Oh man, yeah, I will invite you as well. Man again. Cool. So let me just tidy up my screen a little bit. And screen share. Share. Cool. So there it is. And really, the general we'll go back. The general outline is we could, future things up for discussion and development. Things like messaging other code newbies nearby to like make a plan. Notification email that sends. I think this is an email. Typos. A way for people to identify their areas of interest. So we could all say that we're into JavaScript, and the Python Thursday people can say that they're into Python, etc. And then a sort of like Yelp style places to go and code together, like coffee shops and libraries thing. But the immediate, and if people have ideas for other things we can include, like put it on the board. We'll talk about it at a meeting. You can talk about it now, but if you think about it while we're away, put it on the Trello board. Then right now we're working on like mapped by metro area, a Meetups API wrapper, Meetups API to find events, and then someone needs to be finding a hosting location. It'll probably be me. Things that are in progress. I got started on the README for the project, and Tommy was working on the API wrapper, and he's got some experimental stuff to share and sort of show us the basics of React. I will just say about the README, I've been working on Angular. I haven't dug into React too much myself yet. I'm going to stop sharing since we've done that review. But I do think we need kind of a resource for React. Like, what are the things that people have been using to learn? Do we have a Git repo? Yes, we do. I can share that with everybody in the Slack channel. GitHub is Newbie member.
I found a video of a talk that someone gave about kind of how React works and how it works differently from other frameworks, um, which I thought was really helpful for kind of understanding what's going on, especially for me because I'm pretty new to frameworks and MVC. I don't know, I'm going to share it in the Code Newbie, the Slack channel, if anyone's
Okay,
interested.
that's great. Something definitely digestible for someone who doesn't really know much about frameworks at all.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll include that. Has anyone done like a tutorial or have a specific site that has like a lot of material that you can work through sequentially? That's kind of what I'm looking for.
Yeah, so I've been working through a couple different tutorials. I mean, the main one that I was working through, if you just go to React's main site, they actually have two basic tutorials that you can work through, and it sort of stops and talks about, okay, well, what's going on in each step. When I went through it, looking through it without having seen a whole lot of React before, it was still kind of, a lot to digest. But it was very helpful. I've been going back and looking back through those docs, and I'll get the link here in a second. There was also a nice link that I found today that it just talks about React. So when you go through and look at these tutorials, you're going to see a lot of other buzzwords that go along with React. So you're going to see things like JSX, Flux, Webpack, and those are sort of add-ons that help out with React. But if you're looking to just learn React, like just plain vanilla React, which this sort of helps out with, there's a link here that I'm going to post that just talks about, he calls it raw React. So it's plain vanilla React, and it's a good introduction to sort of the syntax of React and what's going on in the background. And then you can start introducing things like JSX and other stuff along with it as you go along. Also, egghead.io has a free React Fundamentals course that was really helpful as well. Use that. It goes through a bunch of different little mini apps that you can work on, and it's very helpful. They have a couple other courses on there that are paid that I haven't really dug into yet, but I'm tempted to go into them because the first one was really good.
That's how they get you, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for all of that. I will put that in the README, and so hopefully people can go through it because we still have the stuff for Git in there. Did anyone make it to the Saran did a Saturday discussion about Git?
Yeah, I made it there. It was good.
Awesome. Yeah, I know it was recorded. I haven't seen it. I mean, I've seen her do that before. She did it for the last batch of JavaScript folks. But so cool. So that is up somewhere. I will include the link there because not just knowing Git, but also knowing how to use Git on a team with multiple branches. That's I think one of the biggest employer skills is knowing that and it's so fundamental, and it's not necessarily something you could possibly learn on your own. So I think that is a good thing to check out as well, and a good skill to pick up from a group like this. Jeremy, do you want to tell us about this link that you just posted?
Yeah, so I've used a number of different resources. I did check out both the free and paid Egghead, and they're very good, but they're fast-paced. And I also have a subscription to Front End Masters, and they have a React course, but it wasn't quite clicking. And so last week, one of the guys on Slack was publishing a code for $10 Udemy courses, and I stumbled across this one. And this course has been so far the best one for me personally that I've come across. It moves at a nice pace, but he drills into really the bare building blocks, even getting into pulling things down from Git and all the basic things to set it up. And so for me, it's been a good course to go through. I'm about a third of the way through it at this point. So if you need a little more kind of foundational stuff and videos work well for you, it might be worth looking at. I
Good. Yeah, and I will flag anything that's going to cost money because that's really not what we're about. But ideally we could use free resources. But if things cost $15 and they're good, then there's no reason not to point people in that direction. So
Yeah, I had a lot of trouble finding. I did look at like the React web page and things like that, and I had a lot of trouble finding good write-ups and good things that were React's so new, that it was difficult for me to find things that worked for me that were free.
Okay.
And it's going to be a little bit confusing because I don't know if anybody saw or not, but they actually have a new release candidate out that changes some of the syntax up right as I was learning everything. So, I mean, it's not too different, but especially if you go through and you're going to look at tutorials, a lot of them are going to have, I mean, they're going to have the stable version out there, but you're probably going to see more and more that are moving more towards this new release candidate that's out. And so, yeah, it's tough to find write-ups out there that are going to be as in-depth and be able to explain everything at a good level, especially when there's going to be two different syntaxes that you may see out there. So just a warning for people who are going out and looking.
Yeah, that's funny because I'm working with a lot of Angular right now, and everyone keeps saying like, "Oh, it's all going to change." It's so, but I mean that's what we signed up for. Like it's always all going to change. So cool. Well, thank you everyone for that. Oh, whoops. Sorry, I spilled something. For that pile of resources that I can assemble. And I think maybe now, like Tommy, if you're cool, do you mind doing a screen share and sort of like showing us showing us what you came up with, just using React to hit the Meetup API?
Yeah, so let me show you what I've got here. I've got it in a code pen, so it like just a very basic little demo thing that's using what we built. So let me get that up on the screen. All right, so can everybody see my screen here?
I can. Yep.
Okay, great. So just fair warning, if you look at this and you say, "Whoa, this code is really bad," that's fine. This is sort of my first shot at not only React but also at an API wrapper for the Meetup API, which is what I was working on. So what I have here is just a little demo. It's also built using React for these pieces up here. It's just a little app that if you type in a topic, so let's say JavaScript, we want to find JavaScript. This is to return just venues of upcoming events. So we want to find venues that are hosting JavaScript events within, let's say, 10 miles of, I'm going to put in my zip code, 46205. When I hit search, it's going to bring back venues using the Meetup API. So, Iron Yard's here. And there's more information that goes along with it that I just didn't put in the parameters, right? So this is just a little thing that sort of shows off React. So anytime I change this, so let's say I want to look at 90210, for example, right? Then it's going to return and switch and go and show you the venues from a different location. You can switch up the topic and whatnot too. And if I'm going too fast or you want me to hit on something, feel free to stop me.
Can I ask if this is a saved code pen? Do you mind sharing the link so we can all kind of look at it on our own machines if we want?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me send this. One thing I will note is, and this is probably a no-no, and I'll probably get yelled at, but I have my API key in here from Meetup, which I'm going to switch after this. So there's a key here, just var key. So if you want to just fork this and put in your own key, you could just put it here, and then that will make everything sort of work for you.
Okay.
Yeah. So cool. Just a heads up there.
Yeah, we do need to figure out a strategy for hosting this and everyone working on it with separate keys. Maybe when we figure out that, you could write up a little like how-to on hiding your keys in React. We'll figure it out. So, all right, yeah, please walk us through the code. I'm gonna follow along.
Yeah. So let me start off with the React code that I have, and I'll sort of walk through that and show you what's going on. So, I don't know if I doubt everybody here has looked at React yet, but basically React just is built to help you write views, right? So if you're into MVC, React is the V part. So it's basically using components. So you build components and you build them together, and then you can make little apps like this, basically the views that you see here. So I'll show you what I mean. So one thing you may notice is that my HTML, I only have this one div, and I've got, you're probably seeing a whole bunch of HTML-like syntax in my JavaScript. And that's part of React. So what you're seeing here, you can tell it's not exactly HTML, like instead of class, there's class name. This is what React calls JSX, and it's basically like an XML syntax that is pretty much like HTML that processes out to HTML.
Okay.
And it's a way that you can basically put HTML inside of your JavaScript, which sounds scary at first. You know, you want to separate everything out, but it makes it a lot easier to build components this way. And the way that components work, so you have this React render sort of method here, and inside that you put in a component. So my component here is called event list. This is sort of your root component that everything's going to build up into. And then this second argument here is where you want to put it. So I'm putting this inside of my div with an ID of main.
Cool. And you just grab that with plain vanilla JavaScript.
Yeah. I mean, I also have jQuery in here. The API wrapper I have is using jQuery to make the GET request easier, so we'll get to that. But you can use jQuery, you can use vanilla JavaScript to grab it. It works whichever way.
Cool.
So as we move down here, so this event list is going to start here. So when you want to create a new React component, you just put it in a variable. So we'll say var event list, and it says equals React create class, and that's what's going to be your component. So inside this, and inside of every React component class, you're going to see a render function, and this is what ends up rendering out to the page. So inside that function, you're going to return this JSX code, which is basically HTML. It has some differences in here, which you can look into, and you'll see it as you go through tutorials. But for example, you've got, instead of class, you have class name, because class is a reserved word in JavaScript, and it goes into it in different tutorials. But inside here, we're going to put a container class, and then inside, or a container div, and inside that, we're going to put in rows. So I'm also using Bootstrap here, just to give it a little bit of CSS to go along with it. So you'll see that I have a div with an H1 tag in here for venues, and that's where this shows up. And then we also have two other components in here. So two other divs, and inside those we have event venue and event search. Event venue is what's going to spit out the venues here that we return, and then the event search is the form that we use to basically input the parameters for the API request. So there's some other helpful functions in here. So you'll see get initial state on a lot of components, and you'll see state versus props. I'm not going to go into it too deeply, but just know basically that state is more or less what it says. It's the state of your app that's going to change and react, quote unquote, to what different inputs you give it. So this is the initial state. So when you, like, we can refresh this and I'll show you. So when we start this up, we don't have any venues, right? There's a data variable in here. It's just set to a blank array, and then these are going to be some default parameters that I have going to the API. And then every time I type something different in here, so if we go back and do the thing we were looking at earlier, 90210, and that state's going to change, right? So now the zip code I'm looking at is 90210. The topic, I still have it at JavaScript, and the radius is switched to 20. And that's where you're going to see this dot set state. And this is a helper function that I have that handles the inputs that come through. It sets up the parameters for the API request. So these would be the same sort of parameters that you would see in a, in the API request sort of URL, right, that goes out to the Meetup API. And then this is where I have my Meetup wrapper actually using the parameters that we send in, and then it's changing the state of this component based on what we give it. So it's changing all this state in here to what you see. So that's at a very high level. I know I didn't go too deeply into event list. Also down here you see other components. So this is where event venue. This is what's showing the little venue list items. So it's taking the data that we get from this get open events method here. So open events in Meetup, those are upcoming events that have a location, a venue, a name to them. This is where if you go into Meetup, if you go into a group in Meetup, this is where if you see the calendar and it says, oh, on September 20th we're having a Node.js Meetup, right? That's what's going to show up in an open event. That's what open events have locations and latitude, longitude, things like that.
Okay.
So in here, it's using that data, and it's looking to make sure that there is data, that it has that it's defined and has a length greater than 1, and then it's filtering out all of the results that don't have venues. So some of the data that comes back from Meetup, some of these open events don't actually have a venue for whatever reason. So that's what when I noticed it. So I'm filtering out everything that doesn't have a venue, and then we're mapping all the results that do have venues. We're putting them into a list item here, and you'll see these brackets as well. This is how you can tie data inside of JSX. So in here, what we're doing is inside this list item, we're putting the name of the venue. Right. So for this first event, it's going to be General Assembly. That's what's showing up here, and then each one down the line, that's what we show. This key in here, it's part of React and JSX. Every time you have siblings, so if you have a lot of list items, they have to have a specific key that goes along with them. So React knows which one is which when it's doing its sort of DOM manipulation.
Okay.
I don't know if I explained that correctly, so you may want to go look at it, but that's basically what I gathered. It's basically anything that has a lot of siblings.
If we were able, you probably can't. Can you do this on CodePen? If we looked at the DOM tree in the inspect element, and we looked, it would have a key listed on every.
Yeah. Okay. So it's gonna take me a second because CodePen is a little crazy here. Okay.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So if we go into, so here's our container. You're gonna notice too that you see all these data React IDs. That's part of what React adds to the actual DOM. So when you see that, just know that that's what React's doing. And I also don't have it on my machine here, but there's actually it's like a Chrome Developer Tools add-on for React, which specifically shows you all of the different React components. It's really nice. I actually have it on my work machine. I just don't have it on this one. I think it will tell you too, if you go to the console and you're using React on your page, it'll give you the link to it if it sees that you're using React. So if we go inside of this row, I think so here's the UL. So I think the key is this $0 next to the React ID.
Okay.
Because I'm just adding just the index of whatever comes back. I'm just making that it. I think it's basically used so if you're reordering list items around, that it still knows what's what and can make DOM manipulations correctly. That's my understanding of it. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I was reading about.
Yeah. Cool. So where is the actual API call being made? I thought I saw a meetup object that you were calling a method on.
Yeah. So we've got a meetup object here. All the code is up at the top here. So I have just this basic almost module up here, and you can just call it here, just meetup, and then I have a set key. So this is to set your API key. It's one of the ways that you can authenticate to the Meetup API. So if you go to meetup.com and then go to the developer section, you can sign up and get an API key, which is what I have right here. And then you can just input that key into the set key method, so that way you don't have to keep typing this key out every single time you want to do a request.
Mm-hmm.
So if we go up to the actual API wrapper here, so I have this, we're setting up a bunch of different variables, and then we're returning out an object that has the two methods that I have right now. So first we're setting the host, so every API call is going to start off with this URL, api.meetup.com. We have the API key, we're just setting the variable here so it can be switched when we go to set key.
Mm-hmm.
In here, now we have this function called get params. So what this is going to do is, if you notice back down here, I have this params variable, and in here, so each of these keys are the different parameters that go into an API call that you can use. And I don't have all of them, but these are just the basic ones that I used, so we could show some requests. And then, here are the values that go along with it. So in your URL, you would see sign equals true and photo host equals public, and it goes on and on, right? If you've ever looked at a URL with query strings in it.
Yeah.
So up here, what this get params does is it takes an object, like basically a parameters object like that, and it takes the keys and then maps it out so that it basically makes the query strings for you. So it puts the ampersand plus the parameter key equals whatever the value is. So this would be, sign equals true, photo host equals public, zip equals 90210,
Mm-hmm.
and joins them together into a string. And then we're going to use that in this next function here, request URL. This is where it takes the host and then the method, which I'll show you in a minute, basically whatever method you're calling on the API. And then it's going to use these get params, spit out the parameter strings here, and then we're also going to tack on the key to the end of it. So this is where you're going to see and key equals whatever the API key you have.
Okay.
And then we're going to do get response. So this is sort of an abstracted way to call any one of the methods on the Meetup API. I've only tested out with one, so I'd have to go through each one. But basically what it does is it takes the request URL that we get from everything we've already passed to Meetup, and then it's going to do a get request. So this is just the jQuery, Ajax get method.
So yeah, I was wondering where that was going to pop up. Like it's around here somewhere.
So there's a lot that goes in to make it. It's just basically everything up there is just to make this easier and a little bit more readable.
Yeah.
Hopefully. So it takes that URL, and then it also tacks on a callback function here, and it's looking for the response. So every Meetup response comes with a status. So if the status comes back and says 400 bad requests, then we're going to put an error in the console here. And I don't have it's not the greatest error handling right now, but I noticed it today, so I put it in. So if we did something like, actually, oops. So if we left out a radius, for example, we did search. I don't have it actually switching the calls here, but it's going to show up in the console here with an error, bad request, and then it's going to tell you whatever that error message is that comes along with the API object that comes back. And I also have it bringing back JSON P data type because of cross-object request cores
Mm-hmm.
scripting in CodePen. It makes it doesn't like JSON, or I haven't figured out a way to get around that yet inside of CodePen. So maybe somebody else has it, but JSON P requests will go out, and there's no difference. There's not a huge difference really. It still comes back with JSON. It's just you can't. I think part of the things that you can't use headers and callbacks. So, for example, this is why I'm looking for a status here. If it was just normal JSON, it would come back with like an actual error. It would come back and say 400 on the request. But every time you do a JSON P, every status that technically comes back on an API request is 200, which is success.
Mm.
So that's why they have a status in here, so that you can actually see, well, is it actually a success, or was it a bad request, or another different type of error code. So right now I just have it looking for bad request and putting out the error. Otherwise, it's going to call the callback function that's sent to it, and then I'll show you what that is done here. So this is what it's actually returning, this meetup object here. So first, there's set key. So this is where you set your API key for meetup. And the next function here is get open events. So this is what we saw earlier. So this is going to take a parameters object, and then also a callback function, and then it's going to return a response here. So this is where you're actually going to call it. This is the method that gets open events. So the actual, if we do it up here, let me just put a console.log, and I'll show you what the actual URL looks like when we do a request. So we'll go back in here. We'll do JavaScript 10 miles of 902. I cannot spell 90210 today for some reason. We'll search for that, and this is the URL that comes back. So if you were to just click on this right now and open it up, here's all the JSON that comes back.
Wow. Okay.
So now I don't have it on this machine too. I have another Chrome extension that makes JSON look a lot prettier than this, because this is impossible to read.
Mm-hmm.
But just believe me that that's the right JSON that's supposed to come back.
Okay, you got that list from somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So that's basically what the API wrapper essentially just makes it easier to call this URL and put it into a jQuery Ajax GET request and spit it back out. I actually took a lot of what I built here. There are some other client libraries for the Meetup API. There's a Node.js one that I kind of took, picked and choose different things from.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more in depth, but I wanted to see how somebody else did it, and then just sort of tried to piece it together, and obviously not steal everything from them. Right? Theirs is a lot crazier and a lot more, I'm sure, better than mine is. But this is just a very basic way to get open events, which is more or less what we're going to be looking for in our app. We want to find out, we want to find locations of events that are coming up, return that event information, things like that. Obviously, more than just the name of the venue, we want to see what the event is, what it's for, the description, and you can grab all that using the parameters here.
Very cool. So thank you for doing this, and also for walking us all through. I think for me, as someone who hasn't seen any React really, this is a great introduction to sort of how the framework works. Does anyone have questions about any of all that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of stuff happening.
That's a lot of stuff. So I know if you're not understanding it, part of it I'm sure is because the code is probably not great, and the other part is because a lot of people haven't seen React. So no worries. Feel free to ask me any questions. Feel free to go in and fork this CodePen as well.
Okay.
Play around with it. It's pretty straightforward once you learn a little bit of React. The API wrapper, you can just grab this code. I'm gonna do a pull request pretty soon. I want to fix it up a little bit,
Great.
But I'm going to put that onto, or at least make a pull request to the repo, so that way, and you don't have to use this for React. This can be used in any, JavaScript that you want. This isn't just React specific.
Oh, good. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? I think. Falon, you turned your mic. You turned your muting off.
Oh, I did. It was suggestive. Yeah, I don't even know what to ask at this point. To be honest with you, that was quite a bit of information in a small amount of time. This is actually my first time seeing React. Also, like I know I've been wanting to learn it because I've been getting a whole lot of reviews about it, saying like this is the way to go. So I appreciate the overview, but it's going to take me a little bit more time to digest this.
Cool. Yeah, no worries there. Katherine, you're learning about design patterns. Do you know about the design pattern that that Tommy used for the meetup object here?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Oh yeah, like the design pattern that Tommy implemented for the meetup. Cool if you don't, or you're putting on the spot. I just thought it'd be fun if we talked about it.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, cool. It's called a module pattern, where you essentially create the function and run it immediately, and it returns an object that has access to the closure. Which can anyone here explain what a closure is?
Where your code sits on the global level. Something like that.
Not quite.
Or how your codes ran, like which one runs first, right?
Is it?
So my understanding is that a closure would be when you pass in a call to a function, and the function returns whatever it's going to call back to the original caller, if that makes sense. I don't know if I quite fully understand it, but that's my understanding of it.
Okay.
Is it being able to use a local scope variable within, outside of that function by using another function to call that variable?
Yeah, that's the closest, I think, to what it could be. Nan, were you going to say something?
I was just going to add on to that, just that the closure returns something from inside a private function.
Yeah,
And when it returns,
yeah, that's right.
then you can grab it from anywhere else in the global scope without having the global scope having access to it, except via the return inside the closure.
Right. So when you create the scope of this meetup, when you run the meetup object, basically, that creates a scope. And then even though the function's done running, it's returned on line 27, right? It's returned an object that refers to things inside that scope, so they don't garbage collect it. It stays there until as long as the object that was returned is still referring to things inside the scope, it stays alive, even though you can't directly access it.
Yeah.
Like hoisting, right?
Like hoisting. Yeah, in the sense that all the variables from inside are available to you.
Yeah,
You're
so
setting up the memory space for it. And even though it passed the execution context, it's still available. Like the variables that you set up are still available, even though that function has already ran, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, basically what this is allowing us to do is basically sort of give this meetup object an interface here. So the two ways that you'd be able to interact with this object would be through these two methods, set key and get open objects or open events. You wouldn't be able to go in and say, okay, I want to get this variable inside of Meetup. Like you couldn't just go and directly access the API key, variable, or run this get params function outside of this object here. But from what we return here, these two functions, set key and get open events, you can run those outside of this scope. You just can't run all of this in the global scope, if I explained that correctly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Sounds
This
right.
is this is similar to the Hangman project where we were like trying to take the actual like console output of the word, the current word. Is this
That's
making
right.
sense?
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
right. Yes.
who was it? Was it Monish or was it Jesse who created a module for us so that you can't go to the console and directly say what's the secret word because it's hidden inside this closure that is persisting because other things refer to it. Cool. So yeah, Tommy, thanks for that as well. That's a really good object lesson in like the power of JavaScript closures here. So, oh wow, it's already after 7. We did start late though. Still, does anyone have more questions about this? Anything that you don't understand what's going on, or you almost understand something and you'd like a little clarification on it?
I'm sort of with Saran where the explanation sounded totally logical as it was going, but I haven't looked at React at all, so. But I think it'll make sense.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Same here. You know, the React specific stuff. I mean, there are parallel ideas in Angular. So I okay. I have some analogies here, but I do have to dig into it a little more.
Yeah. It looks a lot scarier than it actually is. Once you go through a couple of tutorials and you sort of hear the same things over again, it's going to start to sink in a little bit. At least that's what it's done for me. You know, I probably can't sit down right now and just code this out without looking at something, but I at least understand, okay, like when I look at this line here, this, you know, what refs are in this find DOM node, like I know now what those refer to and how that plays in. You know, it's going to take a bit. I mean, a lot of this stuff is, I've gone through a couple tutorials to do it, so, you know, yeah, I'm still way outside learning it too, so
cool.
You know, no worries.
One question that I have is, for instance, a lot of this HTML-ish looking text that I think is mostly like return objects. Can you turn that stuff into variables and sort of save it all in one place, or is it typically just sort of like laying out there in the open in these really long functions?
So you're talking about, like, for example, this here, or
yeah, or even higher up, right just above the top of the screen, like all of that.
Yeah.
You know, it's a form and with a paragraph and some input fields. Can we save that somewhere as you know, venue form, and just in this function just say return venue form, or is that okay?
Yeah, exactly. So this is sort of a little bit of an example of that in here. So this is a helper function that's getting all of these list items. And then in here, so I'm saving this off into a variable. So var venues equals get venue items. So this is equal to, you know, all of this without having, you know, this all of this code inside of the. Basically, this venues is the product of everything in get venue items. So you could do the same thing for any one of these up here as well.
Cool. Okay.
And you'll typically see that for a lot of helper functions. You'll see that in React where, you know, they don't put a ton of JSX code straight in here. They'll abstract it out and then plug it into the return statement.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's good to know. I for my first looking at React, I was like kind of overwhelmed by how much HTML seems to just be sitting there. Cool. Well, thank you so much. And I know, yeah, if you want to put in a pull request, that's great. I know it sounded like there were more things you wanted to build onto it and expand it a bit, but for now, like, I think this is fantastic. So glad. I think that'll be our first pull request is your work here. So let me just, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying, sounds good.
Cool. Let me just get like a sort of temperature check from everybody. My boss loves saying temperature check. How are you feeling about the project, and what's your comfort level like in terms of learning for maybe even taking on a task this week or next week? I'll do reverse alphabetical this time. Nan, like what are you thinking?
Well, next week, because I haven't even looked at a tutorial yet.
Mhm.
But I think I'll be able to dive into it once I, at least at a beginner level.
Okay, cool. It's good to hear. Michael, what's your interest and confidence level here?
I'm pretty. Oh, wait, is my thing on? Oh, okay. I'm pretty interested, I think. The demo made sense, and I looked at a React.js thing this afternoon. So, like, maybe I could do something simple this week, but I'm not sure.
Okay, sounds good. Mark, how about you?
I don't know anything about React, but from the pure JavaScript side, this doesn't look too scary. You just got to break it down from like function to function to figure out what's going on. That's what I was doing the whole time he was talking. I was like, okay, that's what that function does. All right, that's what that does.
Yeah.
So it's not too scary, but I would definitely want to take a look at a tutorial before I jump into anything.
Okay, fair. Falon, what about you?
Yeah, I'm very interested because I've been wanting to learn React. So I'm very interested in it. But being as this is my first time looking at it, like everybody else, I'm gonna need some time to look over some tutorials. But I can definitely commit to doing something for next week.
Okay,
sure.
Very cool. And then who's that? David.
Yeah, I'd like to have a minor role on the team. I'm working on the project now, creating a tic-tac-toe game, and then I'm starting an Angular project after that for a blog. But I would like to participate in this activity.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Yeah, and if people have other commitments, that's totally fine. Like, this doesn't have to be the only thing you're doing to learn, so that's great. Catherine, how about you?
I think maybe I'll be able to handle something really small.
Okay.
It'll probably help to like have something to do as I'm going through tutorials and like figuring out how things work. Yeah, something small.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I'm glad everyone was comfortable sharing something. I guess I will say, like, I'm looking at I want to save this. So I still need to finish the README. I will have to figure out some kind of hosting location. So we didn't really talk about
like Heroku or something like that. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So we may need. So the idea was we're going to use some sort of like mapping service as our back end. We're only really writing front end code, but we still do need to host it somewhere, and it might need to be more sophisticated than GitHub pages. So I will take a look at that. So I'm just gonna unless someone else who's like not comfortable doing the coding but still wants to help is interested in like taking on that task to like just do a little research on different hosting opportunities and like come back with a recommendation next week. That might be an interesting project that's like not code based.
I'll take that. So we want to find a location or a hosting service that will, that can host a React.
Yeah, exactly. So okay, cool. I will assign that one to you. Are you already on the
Trello?
Trello?
Yes, I am.
David DW. There you are. Gotcha. Cool. So when you start working on it, you can move it to the in progress field. And I'm going to leave the stuff that we've done so far in progress for now, because we're not really in like code review kind of.
And I would assume that these are free options that we're looking for.
Yeah. And if it turns out that GitHub Pages is sufficient, then we'll do GitHub Pages. But if there's something better out there, and we may need to work with Firebase as well. Like, I'm not sure if we need a backend for that. But I think Firebase is.
Okay.
Check out that.
Well, I've seen some tutorials with React and Firebase, so that may be good. I haven't dug into any of them yet, but I know it apparently works pretty well React if we need.
Good. Yeah, I mean everything's in JavaScript now.
Yeah, I've been doing a little bit. I did a little bit of Firebase with my my current Angular project. So yeah, I can lend a hand with what little I now know about Firebase.
Cool. I think it's going to come up. Like we're going to need a database at some point. Cool. And then the other stuff is just like I know folks had ideas for mapping tools to use, but then they're not here now, so I don't remember what they were. Do we also want someone maybe could take on the task of finding us a Maps API that'll store sort of locations for us, because I know that was a big part of the task as well.
I know the one that we were looking at when when we were originally starting up the project, a couple meetings ago, was Mapbox.
Okay.
And it looks pretty cool. I mean, I took a look at it a little bit. I haven't dug into the API or anything like that. But it basically looks like Google Maps, but sort of on steroids.
Cool.
Because it's got a whole bunch of different stuff to it.
Oh
so
yeah, and you could go up to 50,
well.
they've got a free tier with up to 50,000 views. I don't think we're going to threaten to pass 50,000 views anytime soon. So this, okay, cool. I'm just going to copy this into the Trello board, and if someone wants to maybe look into their API and sort of do the equivalent, or at least, what, Mapbox stop loading. Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. Come up with a wrapper for this API as well. Let me add a card. Mapbox API. Does that interest anybody?
What was the assignment for that one?
What's that?
What did you need to do with Mapbox?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So to investigate the Mapbox API and come up with maybe a presentation like the one Tommy did for us about the Meetup API for next week. You on the fence about that one, Mark?
Yeah, I'll put an answer on Trello by tomorrow.
Okay. Cool. Think about it. Well, it's there. If anyone.
Let me read through it first.
Cool. The story is out there, and then once we have that stuff, I think we can really flesh out the creating a site where people can add themselves to a map, take themselves off. We'll do some like CRUD user stories, which is create, read, update, delete. For those of you who don't know CRUD. And we can build that stuff out next week. Is there anything else folks want to talk about this week? I mean, it's we've been going for a while, but I don't want to just like cut things off and say it's over.
No, I have some side projects for next week I could show.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm currently making my first little mini framework.
Oh, okay, your own.
Yeah.
Cool.
Huh?
I just
I got,
make frameworks in my free time.
I got like to the part where I can set my own variable. So
okay.
put it in global. So that's about as far as I got.
Okay, very cool.
But I'll show you next week, like the couple of methods and everything I have.
Very fun. I'm working on a Trello clone in Angular. Maybe it'll be ready for a little like show and tell period next week if we have time. It's definitely not ready yet, but it's for work. But it's also just like I'm treating it kind of as a portfolio project as well. Cool. Anyone else have other interesting side projects they're working on?
just like I mentioned, the tic-tac-toe, but that's not very interesting.
Oh no, everyone's got to start somewhere. Don't sell yourself short. I've done a tic-tac-toe game. Probably everyone here has done tic-tac-toe. Um, cool. Nan, you're saying your own project is not ready for prime time?
Yeah, it's not ready. Right now, my biggest block is that I can't get a build out of it, but that's a long story. It has to do with Gulp and the way I scaffolded it with Yeoman, and now it's tangled up in extra complexity. But
Oh my goodness.
so short thing is I can't put it out there yet.
Okay, I don't know anything about those tools. I'm trying to learn Bower. I think that's my next like JavaScript tool to learn because trying to do this Angular project with a Rails backend and managing all the front end. Rails is not very good at managing front end components.
Yeah.
So I think Bower is going to be.
Bower's easy. It's just Bower install, Bower init. It's easy. It's like Node Package Manager except it's Bower.
Right. Yeah, and you can use they call it a Bower file. I don't know, is that common or is that like a Rails thing?
Yeah, no, there's a Bower. I get them confused. Anyway, there is a JSON file that has all the Bower dependencies in it, and they show up in there when you install your little component. If you remember to put the S flag on it, it gets saved in there, and then when you go to build out the project, then it just grabs those dependencies out of the Bower file and throws them in there. And they get concatenated by Gulp or whatever. It's a long story, but yeah.
Cool, yeah.
Oh, real quick too, because I just thought of this. If you're still looking at, I think my screen's still sharing, I think. But if you're on CodePen and you want to play around with, you want to make your own pen and play around with React on it. One thing you need to make sure of if you're going to use this JSX syntax is you want to make sure that the Babel, I think that's how, or Babel, however you pronounce it, that the Babel preprocessor is set up. So all you got to do is you click on the little gear next to JS and then just make sure that it's Babel preprocessor set up. Babel's built.
Whoa. I lost Tommy. Did anyone else lose Tommy?
Yeah, sure did.
Lost him
Took
as
me a
well.
while to figure that out.
Oh.
So make sure you have that if you're working on CodePen and using React.
Cool.
And also if you're using it in general.
Can you repeat your last few sentences? Because we kind of lost your audio there for maybe about 30 seconds.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Yeah, just make sure that this Babel preprocessor is set up in CodePen if you want to use it with if you're using React. Also, I haven't dug into it yet, but apparently Babel's pretty big if you want to just use it outside of CodePen and just use it on your own builds. It also helps out with ES6 and all that fun new crazy JavaScript stuff. So
that's required to use React?
It's not required, but it's helpful. It's required if you want to use it in CodePen. And you're going to use this JSX. Otherwise, like you could rewrite all of this in JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see that in a tutorial, but it's really crazy and it gets really long and huge.
Yeah.
So that's why I like using the JSX version of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, and then also in CodePen, I saw you added jQuery and React libraries. If you go to put in Babel or Babel, does it add those automatically, or do you have to specify those yourself?
No, you would have to specify that, but they have quick adds for them. So if you just click on quick add, it already has a bunch of the popular frameworks and libraries ready to go. So you can just click, for example, Angular, and it just adds a line right there.
Okay. Very good. Thanks. Yeah, I have played a little with JS Fiddle and less with the JavaScript in CodePen. I think of CodePen more as like a CSS thing, but that's just me. Cool. All right. Yeah. Anything else anyone wants to talk about? This is your time to be a JavaScript nerd, so no shame here. Um, cool. Well, it sounds like some folks have an idea of what they want to do for next week. If you don't have a task set aside, then at least try to do some tutorials and Tommy, if you want to put that pull request in, so I think at least reading through Tommy's code as you learn React could be a really good teaching opportunity. Cool. I guess we'll wrap up there. I'm gonna turn the broadcast off now. Goodbye, everyone watching at home.